It always amazes me every time I come here that it's still untouched, that it hasn't been ruined and it hasn't been in any way changed or defiled, that everything's still here and it's still just as beautiful and pristine as the first time I came years and years ago when my dad brought me when I was just a kid. And I can see shells of pippies and cockles and oysters. I was raised on oysters, oyster sandwiches with my dad. And I can see little footprints of all sorts of little scurrying animals. And it's nice to know that it's still a shelter for what belongs here. So this is a shell midden, and this would have been used by Aboriginal people and my ancestors here on D'harawal land as a shelter, especially from the rain, especially as a beautiful place to sit and light fires and keep yourself warm when it got cooler. And there's evidence of the fires that have burnt here over the years, the food that was eaten here, all the shellfish that you can only get down there in the river because it's now fresh water and it's been blocked off with a dam and a weir. And there's also, just in case you weren't convinced, there's stencil handprints along the wall of the people who would have once been in here. They're done with ochre, white ochre and red ochre along here. And they're the classic example of how people would mark their territory and basically leave a calling card saying this is where we've been, this is where we'll come again. And you could usually tell how many people were in a family or a clan by the stencil, the handprints that were done on the walls. And in some clans you could also tell if there was a lot of arm showing. That was the most senior person in that clan. And there's some red ochre markings down the end which I'd love to know what they mean, but I have no idea. So this is your pretty classic shell midden, and these were everywhere throughout Sydney, everywhere. And there was notes written up about them in the European diaries, all about them, how warm and toasty they would get with the fires in here. Now there's not very many left, but we're lucky we've got this one to come and visit. So here is a typical hand stencil print that you'd find in a shell midden on this sandstone. It's done with splattering mushed up ochre and spit and spraying it on your handprint. This one could have been one handprint already there and one done over the top of it, or two hands done like this together. That's white ochre. That was usually used for peaceful markings and peaceful ceremonies on the body, times of joy and celebration. Red was a little bit different. It's very hard to find the red ochre, but they obviously had a bit of it because there's some of them done here. I sometimes wonder in my head if maybe this was done after arrival and it sort of indicates a fear or a disappearing of the people who did them. Just a few years ago we were able to get to these sites and now we can't. I think it's kind of due for a fire through here, especially because there's so many sites that we can usually go and see and visit. So part of me doesn't want the death and destruction of a fire, but another part of me wants to go back and see those places again because I miss them and they're beautiful and no one knows about them. And there's only secret ways to find them. And it's all around the Guiamere lily, which is almost like the botanical totem of the D'harawal. We know that when the lily flowers, it's time to go out to the coastline and sing the whales in. And we know that when that flower turns really dark red, it's time to move back in before the cold weather hits too hard. And that's the D'harawal story here with the whale. It's beautiful.